purpose of my final project is to create a website depicting the medals earned by countries in the modern Olympic era. The first part of my screencast will discuss the 4 different maps as well as the other elements present on my webpage. The second portion of my screencast will discuss the cartographic and technical considerations that went into deciding how to design my website. The first map present on my webpage is the map of the total Olympic medals in the modern era. As you can see, when you scroll over a country with your mouse, the country's name, as well as the total medals won in the modern era, show up in the information box to the top right. Countries such as Bolivia, which have never won an Olympic medal in their history, do not show up in the information box because their latitude and longitude coordinates are not registered within the GeoJSON file. The next map is a breakdown of all the gold medals in modern Olympic history. This is very similar to the first map in that when you scroll over the country, you can see the name of the country as well as the total gold medals in the information box to the top right. The major difference, however, is countries such as Afghanistan, which have never won a gold medal, still show up within the information box. This is because, though they haven't won a gold medal, Afghanistan has won an Olympic medal in general, so their latitude and longitude coordinates are registered within the GeoJSON file, so their name does still show up in the information box regardless of their gold medal total. The next 2 maps depict the Summer Olympic locations and the Winter Olympic locations respectively. Each poster represents the city in which it held the Olympics, and when you click on a poster, for example St. Louis, you can see that the Olympics were held here in 1904, and when you click on another one, say this one, you can see that the Olympics were held here in Beijing in 2008. The next 2 portions are in my webpage are there simply to make the page more aesthetically appealing. This section shows the posters of all the Olympic Games from 1896 up through the most recent one, 2012, showing the progression of the posters and honestly the backwards designs where they simply seem to be getting less exciting as time goes on. The picture section of my webpage is very similar to the previous section in that there is one picture/highlight from each Olympic Games, with the pictures beginning in color once, of course, there was more color photography, and basically gives a nice collage of what the Olympics have been like throughout history and how they have progressed. I close out my webpage by adding some quizzes at the bottom under my Test Your Knowledge section. There is a quiz on the total Olympic medals, Summer Olympic locations, and the Winter Olympic locations. All these quizzes are hosted on Sporkle.com and are quite fun and exciting, so if you have time I would suggest trying them because they are quite a challenge. When designing my webpage, I'd always planned to have 2 main maps, one map having the total Olympic medals, another map having the total gold medals. However, I never really planned to have 2 separate maps depicting the Summer Olympic locations and Winter Olympic locations. The reason I kept the maps as such is because when I overlay them onto the original maps, say overlaying the Summer Olympic locations onto the total Olympic medals and the Winter Olympic locations onto the gold medals map, they basically simply covered a lot of the European countries. As you can see from this map and the Summer Olympic locations, a lot of the Olympics have been held within Europe, and when all these posters were clobbered together and put onto the main map, they essentially covered up some of the countries such as Switzerland or Belgium, and you couldn't scroll over those countries and see the total medals for them, but rather could only click on the Olympic posters. Additionally, I decided to keep the Summer Olympic locations map and the Winter Olympic locations map separate because, like I said before, many of the Olympics have been centered around Europe, and this area just became too cluttered if I put them all on one map. One key element of my cartographic design, which took me a while to decide on how to color, was the gold medals breakdown map. Originally, I wanted to have a color scheme where the countries with the lowest amount of gold medals, with at least one, would be in the lightest yellow color, and the countries with the most gold medals would be in the darkest gold color. However, when I actually tried this out, I realized it just did not work aesthetically or visually, and going with a classic colorbrew2.org color scheme seemed to work best. The 2 maps both use a quantile classification scheme. I chose this scheme because it's the most balanced in its designs because each section has an equal number of countries within it. It doesn't really seem that way because the biggest countries do seem to have the most medals. However, as a whole, the countries are fairly evenly divided on how many medals they have won, and the categories in legend are divided accordingly. In conclusion, this wraps up my screencast, and I hope you enjoyed the website and enjoyed